John, you seem to really do a lot of recording. How many this year? 3?
2 or 3 this year.
Yeah.
It's usually a couple, 3 every year.
Yeah.
Many with my friends with Origin Records, John Bishop and Matt Jorgensen. So thankfully now, if you have friends with labels, or friends with clubs, or friends who book festivals, some things are possible, even if you're not a famous guy.
The latest on Origin is from your band Scenes. Well, it's a collaboration. I wouldn't call it your band, right?
No, it's not my band. It's kind of it's basically a cooperative trio.
Mm-hmm. And tell us about the other two.
Sure. We started. These guys are old friends. Bassist Jeff Johnson and John Bishop. I've known them both for more than 20 years. John for 30. And I hadn't played with either one of them in a while, and just on a whim I called John about 12, 13 years ago because I knew he had the Origin record label with drummer Matt Jorgensen and thought it might be fun to play again. So unbeknownst to me at the time, he and saxophonist Rick Mandyke and Jeff had been doing a trio on Tuesday nights up in Seattle, so I went up and sat in with them one night and we enjoyed it. So that was the first Scenes recording with saxophonist Rick Mandyke, Jeff Johnson and John Bishop. And then Rick, unfortunately, after we had done that recording and some gigs together, had to stop playing the saxophone because he had a hernia and had to quit playing the horn. So he's now got a musical life playing piano and guitar in Seattle, and I think is doing fine. So we then kept the group as a trio with John and Jeff, and have done 3 other recordings as a trio. For this latest one, we added Hans Teuber, who's also an old friend, and we thought he would be a nice blend in the mix.
And he's from Seattle also?
Hans, I'm not sure if he's from Seattle originally, but he's been in the Northwest a long time. And these days primarily makes his living as a musical director for a show in Seattle, a commercial show, kind of like dinner theater, I think. But still has kept his hand in playing jazz, and I think has a very wonderful personal sound on the horn.
Have you ever been able to explain what happens when musicians click like that?
The conversation, it's pretty hard to define. I think and it also is evolving. I mean, the Scenes group, now with Hans, maybe we'll do some gigs also, but it is still changing and evolving as we change and evolve individually and have other experiences outside of the group. It just allows for certain kinds of spontaneous exchanges and chemistries to happen that are pretty hard to define, but just there's this comfort level and there's a level of trust and obviously a shared repertoire, all of which makes it very comfortable to take chances together, to go places together that maybe you couldn't go 3 or 4 years earlier. So I think an audience can kind of sense that communication even if you can't define it in a verbal way. You just sense this. I mean, you can hear it in, not to put myself at the same level as a Bill Evans trio or a Miles Davis group, but when you hear a group like that, I guess you could probably analyze it and define it, but it really is more just about a feeling of how those folks relate to each other in a very conversational, off-the-cuff way.
Do you all bring in compositions?
John Bishop does not write, to my knowledge, but Jeff has written quite a bit. I've written some. So usually if we have a project, we'll each bring 3 or 4 tunes and maybe throw in a standard or 2.
How does that work?
We just get together and have a quick rehearsal before and share a little bit of music. It's always...
Is it written?
It's written, actually, my stuff I compose in my head, and then I have a friend help me transcribe it. Guitarist Mike Pardue, who lives here in town, helped me transcribe. So I have an ebook that you can get from Mel Bay and some other charts that Mike has helped me actually write down. I memorize them. And mine are written as chord melodies. Jeff is actually quite a distinctive composer. I really like his writing. So we always have probably 3 or 4 of his tunes on every record, including this last one.
And then earlier this year, people were surprised and delighted to find you playing with Dave Liebman on an album.
Yeah, I met Dave in the early 70s. He used to play with my guitar teacher, who was a man named Lake Chamberlain, who died in his 40s. Wonderful guy, and a great teacher, who was a local guitar hero in Connecticut, where I grew up. And he and Dave played some little jobs in the 70s, and actually we're in a group together, which was a little bit like Blood, Sweat, and Tears and 10-Wheel Drive, sort of mixing together jazz horn players with some rock rhythms. In fact, Dave was actually in 10-Wheel Drive while he was playing jazz. So I met Dave 40 years ago. And we played a little bit when I was first coming up, just when Link would let me sit in on a tune or 2, and the guys knew that I was a Link student, but they were very supportive and very helpful. And about 15 years ago, Dave and I were both teaching up at Banff in Canada, and we had a chance to do some recording at the studio there with Don Thompson. So Dave and I recorded together, and the recording was done in '98. John put it on Origin in 2002. So Dave and I don't see each other very often because he's busy with his work. And about 1.5 years ago, he sent me an email saying he'd liked some video footage of a friend had posted with me playing a new guitar. Why he even saw it, I have no idea. So I just shot him a quick email back. It would be great to play again sometime, thinking he's probably not going to answer. But he did. So it started a little conversation. And a year ago Thanksgiving, November 2013, 2012, 2013, yeah, the record was done. The record just came out, but it was recorded Thanksgiving. I was able to snag him at home, and we went to a studio near where he lives in Pennsylvania, and had an hour rehearsal. I borrowed a friend's nylon string guitar. He brought his tenor and soprano and played a little piano. So we were in there about 5 hours, and we both thought it was good enough to put out. So I mixed it and mastered it out here, and John put it out. And I think Dave sounds wonderful on it. Actually, he has done some other duo recordings, but I think he's known primarily playing in larger groups. And in this setting, the sound on both the horns is a bit different. It's a softer sound on both horns.
Absolutely.
And he's a wonderful duo partner. I think he's done this probably over the years with people like Richie Byrek, and I read in a review that someone did in All About Jazz that he'd also done something recently with Mark Copeland. He's done things, I think, with Vic Juris in duo. Vic was in his group for 20 years playing guitar. So he's comfortable in a variety of settings, but I never played with him in duo. But it was totally easy and relaxed and fun.
It was interesting, coming from the two of you, that you played mostly standards.
Yeah, well, mostly obscure ones, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, we brought in, we played How Deep Is the Ocean and Everything I Love, but we also played some Kenny Wheeler, some Wayne Shorter, the Jobim Bossa Nova that people don't normally hear. So the stuff is kind of on the obscure side, but definitely a lot more kind of mainstream than a lot of Dave's projects, for sure.
Yeah, I can really see you into a Kenny Wheeler tune.
I love Kenny.
Dave, not so much.
Dave knows Kenny, actually.
Yeah.
And when I was teaching at Banff with Dave, Kenny was there that year. Because Kenny's Canadian,
Yeah.
and he had been at Banff many times. And that particular year, he was also there. And I love Kenny's music. And Dave and Kenny know each other. And I think they probably played together in England and perhaps other places.
It was surprising to hear him on piano.
He's not a bad piano player. He actually studied with Tristano, I think, in the 60s.
Really?
And I'm not sure if he studied piano with him or harmony. But Dave actually knows the harmony quite well on piano. I mean, he knows all sorts of complex harmony, obviously,
Well, what other projects do you have coming up?
One coming up that'll be out with a Swiss label, TCB, in April with vocalist Kendra Shank. And she and I have some West Coast and East Coast dates in April. She'll be in Portland, so I'd love to maybe have her on your show too.
Do you know where are you going to be?
Matt Miner is trying to produce a concert for us here in Portland.
Gotcha.
It's late April. I will certainly let you know.
Yeah.
And we have other dates in Washington and California. I think you'll like Kendra.
Yeah. Can you compare her to anyone?
She doesn't sound like anybody.
Really?
She started
That's good.
As a kid singing folk music, so she has this kind of airy soprano, and then she got interested in jazz and studied with Jay Clayton in Seattle, and loves Nancy King, and she's been in New York now for more than 15 years and plays with people like Frank Kimbrough and Dean Johnson, who's originally from out here. So she's surrounded herself with great jazz musicians for the last 20 years, so she's evolved a very personal style. She doesn't scat in the conventional way, but she definitely improvises. She loves to take chances. And in the last 10 years or so, she's incorporated a loop station. I think she picked up on this idea from Jay Clayton, who also uses electronics. So Kendra can create these sort of collages in real time as we play. And it's actually, some of this is on the CD, where we'll mix together some acoustic guitar with some layered electronics. And I think it's quite organic and quite unique and very clever, I think.
Well, we're lucky to catch you in town. Are you heading out anywhere anytime soon?
Yeah, I usually, I'm out for between 6 and 8 and 9 months of the year. So I've been home for a little bit now. 2013, I was out for probably 8.5 months, and I hit the road again in late January. So,
where are you going?
California's first, then I'm in Europe for a little while in March, and then the dates with Kendra in April, and then East Coast in May. So.
Great. Well, I'm glad we were able to catch you.
Me
Thanks
too,
a lot.
Tom. Thank you for having me.